To be honest, this invitation to create art stumped me out of fear. Fear that I'm not artful, fear of my lack of knowledge and true understanding of the diaspora of the suffrage movement. Sure, I've read some of Sojourner Truth's poems. I know that Susan B. Anthony was born practically down the road from me in Adams, Massachusetts. And I have an idea of what British suffragettes look like thanks to watching the Disney version of Mary Poppins. But what neither Disney nor my history classes taught me was the truth of the suffrage struggle and how so many people still struggle today. This display you're seeing lives next to my mailbox. It's the place where I receive my checks, my census form, my mail-in ballots. It's a place I see every day. I wanted to have a daily visual reminder of my rights, the equities and inequities that endure. But I wonder what others see as they pass by. Does it mean anything to my friends and family who visit? The mail carrier? My neighbors? My partner? For a while, none of these dates, less maybe 1920, really meant anything to me, until now. In my initial research, I was struck by the fact that it took decades to achieve voting opportunities for all citizens in the United States. 1920. Women secure the right to vote, but not all women can. 1952. Until 1952, federal policy barred immigrants of Asian descent from becoming U.S. citizens and having access to vote. 1957. Despite having the federal right, it was up until this year, some states still barred Native Americans from voting. Some Native Americans still struggle to reach polling places today. 1965. The landmark Federal Voting Rights Act is signed into law, securing African Americans' rights to vote under the 15th Amendment, among other marginalized groups of citizens. Still, Black voters, especially in the South, were diverted from voting through tactics like literacy tests, taxes, and straight-up lies about ballot information, polling places, and dates. 1975. The Voting Rights Act was finally amended to include Spanish-speaking and other non-English-speaking American citizens into the voting process. I decided to paint these dates onto a series of stones I had collected, careful to include the purple, white, gold, and green colors often used during the women's suffrage movement. I arranged these rocks together to symbolize the concept of quote-unquote power in numbers. They've been placed in my garden intentionally beside some growing irises. Irises have often been seen as symbols of faith, hope, wisdom, courage, and admiration. In some cultures, purple irises were planted over the graves of women to summon the goddess to guide the dead in their journey. To me, this is where this assemblage belonged. I added this stone with a symbol for woman as a reminder that these dates did not always mean the women's rights to vote were set in stone. As I continue my education in this subject, it's intended that this garden will grow into something that's part memorial, part warning sign, and part guidepost. Here are some things to think about. Did you know there is no minimum age for a borrower on a federal student loan, but young people still have to wait until age 18 to have a say by ballot in government? Did you forget that despite living in U.S. territories, citizens of Puerto Rico and Guam still cannot vote in a federal election? Did you know states lose tens of thousands of votes due to voter ID laws because of barriers to getting a simple government-issued photo ID? When you go to vote, will you remember that some convicted felons will lose their right to vote for life? And did you know 60% of U.S. polling places still cannot fully accommodate people with disabilities. Does this sound fair to you? The pursuit of equitable suffrage continues as gerrymandering, redlining, and voter suppression persist. Despite the laws, access is not always attainable nor equal.